I'm Michael Masciola. I'm here to give you some of my information about the United States Navy. I was in there for 2 years. I wanted to go into the Navy when I was 17. Mom and dad wouldn't sign the papers, so I had to wait until I was 18. The day that I was 18, my mom says, okay, go ahead. That was my 18th birthday. I went down to the city. I volunteered, and 3 days later, I was into the Navy. Went into the Navy, and we went. I went to boot camp, which was in Sampson, New York. That's up in Geneva, around Watertown. Very cold, freezing up there. Like the barracks were off of a lake, and in June you had to sleep with a blanket. It was so cold up there. It was freezing, and I was like one of the youngest there. And what happened is when we went through maneuvers or if we did anything that was strenuous, they the fellows that were there, the sailors that were there, wouldn't let me go do anything, maneuvers or nothing. I could never figure out why. They what I did was stay in the barracks and straighten up the bunks in case we had an inspection. They said this is what they gave me. Well, if we have an inspection, we want our bunks to be nice and. And when we did go on maneuvers or something, they would put all their valuables in a circle, and they'd say, "Okay, Mike, you stay here and watch our valuables." Wouldn't even let me go on maneuvers. So after I was at boot camp for our training was 8 weeks, and then we got out of boot camp. And the day that we got out, they come over to me and said, "You know why we never let you do anything? Because you were our son." I was so young. And I reminded them of their sons that were back home. So they wouldn't let me do anything. I didn't do anything. And what happened was it was me and another fellow who didn't go with the company. The rest of the company went over to overseas. I think they went over to France or something, and they left. And he come over and he says to me, I met this other fellow a few weeks later. He says, "Did you hear what happened to the company?" I says, "No, what?" He said, "They all got killed in the battle." I think it was in the Pacific. And I didn't want to hear that, but what are you going to do? So from there, from boot camp, I went to Virginia for a couple of weeks. And then they sent me to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And while I was there for maybe about 4 or 5 weeks, and they had me sweeping the streets in Brooklyn at the Navy Yard. Well, that didn't go with me. After a couple of weeks, I got a little jittery, and I said, a couple of fellas, other sailors, were doing the same thing, and I moaned about it, and they says, "Yeah, I don't want to do that either." So we made an appointment and went to see the admiral. We wanted to go overseas, so we get there. And he says, "Well, what do you fellas want?" And I says, "Want to go overseas? We're volunteering to go overseas." He says, "You get out of this office and don't ever come back. When we're ready to send you overseas, we'll let you go." We went out of there. But then a couple of weeks later, there was a ship, a destroyer, which was a Soli, and I was sent on that. It had to be commissioned, and that they were commissioning it on December the 7th in 1944. And my mom was invited, and my sister was invited. They come in for the commissioning. and it was a nice thing. But when you commission a ship, you're considered a plank owner, and I was considered a plank owner. I have some pictures. You want to take pictures of it after you will go into the other room again. And they gave me a big frame with saying plank owner on it. And while we were waiting we had to go on a shakedown cruise. Shakedown cruise is to see what that ship could do, what its capabilities are. Sorry. And we went we went to while we were waiting for the orders to where to go for our shakedown cruise, we got a call to go to Long Island Sound. There's a German submarine there. So we get off the docks in Brooklyn, we head over to Long Island Sound, and we picked up a pilot who knew the waterways so that he took us to where it wasn't shallow, it was a lot of water. And that German sub was sitting right in Rye, where the breakwaters were, Rye Beach, the breakwaters there. You would never think a warship could be in there. That's how deep it was. And when we got there, he was gone. I guess he saw us coming and he just took off. Then we went back to the Navy Yard again, and we finally got our orders to go, and we went to Norfolk, Virginia. We were there for a while. We were out, and we were gunnery practice and general quarter practice. Everything was practice. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, they decided to make us what do you call it, ship? A training ship. And what we did every morning, early in the morning, we would take, like we were 329 guys on that destroyer. We would take they would come to the docks, another 329 sailors, and bring them aboard. And then we would go out to the Chesapeake Bay and would have gunnery practice and general quarters and, all that stuff. And we did that. Well, previous to that, though, I started to say about uh, I jumped myself. We went on a shakedown cruise right after we left the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we went to Bermuda, and we hit a storm in Bermuda. Shakedown cruise is where you open up everything to see how fast the ship could go and the gunnery and stuff. And we hit a storm, very bad storm, and the ship was splitting down the sides, and maybe 6 inches of metal just ripping apart, and rivets started popping along the top of the deck. And we had to take cotton and stick cotton in the holes so that the light wouldn't shine through and the enemies wouldn't see it, so were safe. Then we had to go back to Brooklyn to have that. What they did was they put an expansion brace where it went back and forth when you would hit high seas, it would just go this way instead of breaking in half. So they fixed that up and a few other things they had to do. Then we was then we were sent to Norfolk, Virginia, for a training ship, and every day we would pick up 329 sailors, bring them aboard, and show them how to fire the guns and what everything was, where everything was, torpedoes and stuff. On that ship, we had 3 5-inch 38 guns, and we had 6 torpedoes, had quad anti-aircraft guns. They had one quad on one side the right side and a quad on the left side. And then we had 20 millimeter guns, and we had depth charges on it. So we were pretty. When we went out to sea, we were always hunting down submarines because we had depth charges and we had torpedoes. The ship was used for a lot of things. Uh, if they're bombarding the shore, what we would do was go between these big ships that were firing the guns onto the shore to the enemies, and so that they wouldn't get hit, we would blow smoke, black smoke, out of the smokestacks, and it would stop. So the enemy couldn't see this or other ships, and, and the enemy couldn't fire back at them. So they did a lot. The destroyer was a good ship. Did a lot of work there. After that, we got our orders to go to California. We went to San Diego to go overseas into into the Pacific, and we left. Let's see, we left there. Oh, I forget when that was, and we went over by the way of going through the Panama Canal, which was very interesting. And what was nice about the thing, we had some fun. There's a, I don't know if it's after we got out of through the canal or before we got through. There's a big lake there, and what the ships would do was that when they hit that lake, they would take the hoses down and they'd flush out all and and all the salt, which would, if you didn't do that, the it would eat the paint up. So you were always painting the ship. So they would get out there and they'd wash down the decks and compartments and everything. And the next thing you know, the enlisted men are fighting with the officers with the hoses. They're having a ball, having some fun. It was interesting. Panama Canal. This side of the canal was clean. The other side was awful. Oh, it was a mess. Filthy, dirty. It was awful there. Then we went to Pearl Harbor, which was awful, but it was just nothing there. It was just one building, one hotel was standing, and it's still there. I've been there to see it, and it was called the Royal Hawaiian, and it's still there, still pink. It was painted pink, and it's still pink. My wife and I, after 25 years, went back, and I happened to be on the sand, and happened to tell her that, when we were here, there's only one building was left. It was the hotel, and this fellow was sitting next in the sand. He says, "Well, if you go over," he says, "just step by a few feet down," he says, "and you'll see it's still there." And it was interesting. Saw the Diamond Head, which when we were going in to land, that plane was listening to the right, and I said to my wife, "That's the Diamond Head." I picked it out right away, you know, and sure enough, the pilot gets on the loudspeaker and he says, "If you look over to the right window, you'll see the Diamond Head." It's a big thing in Hawaii, the Diamond Head, and that was nice. And we went from there. We went out to into the Pacific, right, and we went to. We were heading for. Oh, I gotta get my mind here. Yeah, Let's see. We went to. We were in the Pacific. And we went to Philippines. We were heading for the Philippines. That's where our orders were to go to the Philippines, and we're right maybe a half a day away from it, and we got orders to turn around and go back and go into the over into Kwajalein, over into the Pacific. Why they chased us around and going out, I don't know. And we went Pacific, and we we were there for a couple of days, and we ended up we were when they took us away from the Philippines. Uh, the atomic bomb was dropped. Yeah, let's see, and we were right at the fallout. So what they said was, what the captain got on the microphone, and he says, "Button down all hatches. No one allowed up topside." And what they did was, because we were right outside of the fallout of the atomic bomb, and they just killed all the engines, everything. So that it was, and it was strange because we're just floating on the water, and it's just I think we did that for a day, and then we were all right. And then from there we went into Kwajalein, and we went uh, into Japan. No, we went. No, first we were sent to the island of Kusai. We were we were only 2 days away. We were right next to it because the war had been over, and we had to go to the island of Kusai to have the Japanese sign that island, which they owned, over to the United States. So we got there, and they had the signing of the island on the ship that on the Soli, and uh, we were there uh, on the island for about a month and a half to get them all situated. We we took out all the guns that the Japs had on the island, all the ammunition, and put them on barges and dumped them into the Pacific Ocean. And what the captain did was he gave all the enlisted men, he gave them rifles and bayonets, and he gave all the officers the pistols, the Japanese pistols, and he got the saber sword of the head Japanese who was on the island, and they had the signing over to the United States on the ship there. But we were there a month and a half, and we helped them get straightened out on the island. Also, made a sick bay for them, and then from there we went to Japanese port. I can't think of the name. When we hit the port, they had a gym there, and I was one of the fellas who organized the basketball team for the ship. So they had a gym there, and we went up to play. The guys went up to play, and when I got into the locker room, I was putting on my sneakers, and I look at the end of the bench, and I see this fella there. I says, "Hey, Paul, how are you?" So he just didn't really know who I was. At least he he didn't know who I was, and he said, "Oh, Mike, how are you?" And he realized who I was, and I played basketball with him when I was in recreation in Harrison and in the high school. He and I played basketball together. So got together and I said to him, "You want to play a couple of the guys on the ship? We'll go 2-on-2." He says, "Yeah, Mike, see what you could do." So, so that's what I I got two guys from Pennsylvania, and they were willing to play against the two of us. Well, needless to say, he and I, we played together. He knew all the moves I was making, and I knew all the moves he was making. And those two guys, they got so mad at us, at me, never spoke to me again on the ship. And I'm not kidding. They wouldn't talk to me again because I guess they figured, what did he do? But we really killed them. We played really well. And then we were there for a couple of months, I guess. And then I got discharged from there. I went out to Long Beach, California, and I got discharged. I don't remember. I don't remember how I got home from Long Beach. Whether I flew home, train, I don't remember that. But the ship when after I got off, went back to Massachusetts, and they took three of the torpedoes out of the deck, and they put missiles on it, and they did some other work to it, and then sent it out. It was in the three wars. It was in the what do you call it? Korean War and the Vietnam War and the Second World War. Ship was in three wars, and then when they finally got rid of it, they took it to Puerto Rico and used it as a markers for what do they call that? Target. Well, they use it for target practice. It wouldn't go down. They bombed the hell out of it, and it wouldn't go down. So what they did was they made reefs out of it, and what they did was they went aboard the ship and they put dynamite on it and blew it up. Yeah, it was a good ship. It was good duty. I enjoyed it. Any questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
I got home,
Yeah,
and that was it.
I have this page of questions.
How would you start?
I was there. I was on that ship for a year and a half.
All right.
It was great. It was good. It was good duty. It was cold. Like the destroyer. It they called that the dungaree navy. They used to call it because in the destroyers, we had dungarees, we had undress blues, and we had dress blues. And if anything like bigger than a destroyer, the sailors that were on those ships, they would be in their dungarees and they'd work with dungarees. Then when they were whistled down for chow, they would have to take the dungarees off and put their undressed blues on to go to eat. Then go back, take their undressed blues off, and put their work clothes on. And that's being a chicken outfit. That's what they used to call it. We were destroyers. Great. Even now, they use them. They're always there. I mean, they you see these big ships weren't able to move. They don't travel as fast as a destroyer. When we went on that shakedown cruise, that was one of the things that they did. They wanted to see how fast it would go, and everything starts vibrating at the top speed, and they had to stop we did, I think, 32 and a half knots, which is pretty fast on water. Because these other ships, like your battleships, cruisers, and the aircraft carriers, they're big ships, and they don't move. They can't move and get out of their way. So we always had destroyers around them to protect them. We had to protect those ships because they were so big. And then he would always use torpedoes to blow them up. Oh, I started out that I left out. I'm glad you asked that question. I started out on the deck force. They gave me a chipper and a paintbrush. Well, I wasn't very happy with that, and I did it for a while. And I had I was a lookout on the bridge where, you know, I would search the water, the horizon, and then the sky on the bridge, and I was a lookout there. Well, that wasn't bad, but I become friends with a signalman that was there, and I think he had a little something on somebody. I happened to tell him that I didn't like being on the deck force, chipping paint and stuff. And after a while, one day he says to me, "You want to get off of that deck force?" I said, "Oh, sure, why not?" He says, "Okay." He said, "How would you like to be a helmsman?" I says, "Oh, good, great. Steer the ship, fine, great. Okay." So I took that job, and they were looking for a sailor to go on a gun director, which is right above the bridge, which took the three big 5-inch 38 guns that it fired those three guns, the gun director. And that was my battle station right above the bridge. And I got to like it. I was happy with everything I was doing. And they also put me as an apprentice in the fire control gang. Fire control was not like you would think flames, fire. It's gun firing. We had to take care of all the guns on the ship. Every day we would go out every morning and check all the guns on the ship, make sure that they were elevating and, firing stuff, make sure that they were all in good shape. If they weren't in good shape, we'd have to repair them. And we had big books with all the schematics and everything, and we'd take the book and would find out what was wrong and then fix it. And I was I was on that ship. I went where sailors don't go. Very few guys get to do to see this. I went into the gyro room. The gyro is, what the gyro does. It balances the ship. It's the poles that come in, picks it up. It's like a big globe sitting on, like almost floating in air. And that room is sealed where you can't get in. Nobody goes in there because any dust that gets in it will knock off the whole thing, the balancing and everything. So nobody is allowed in there. But being in a fire control gang, I was striking one of the head of my senior took me down once, and that's the only time anybody was ever in there, and I was with him. I went down to see it. It was something that you just can't visualize it. Something like that would balance the ship. Great. So I was pretty happy with myself in the end. Yeah. Yeah. Then I got out of the service. When I got out, I did very, very well. You know, this is this is a great country. You guys are young guys. I tell you now, it's out there. If you want it, you can get it, but you have to go get it because it's not going to go to you. You have to go out and get what you want. It's a great country. It's out there. They got everything you want. You have to go out and get it. You can't sit back. Can't sit back. You have to be able to go get it. And that's what type of guy I was. Hey, you see that piece there? I bought that at an auction. It was born red. And I stripped it down and I even made one of those where the glass is, all that design stuff, that piece of wood that wasn't there, it was all broken up. I made one of that. I made that piece. And I stripped that all down and that's worth maybe $300-400 now. That piece there, somebody threw it on the curbside. That foot was busted. I made a foot for it. When I was in school, I was like in the 6th grade, 7th grade. And for shop, I used to take stuff and refinish it, but I was getting paid. I did a radio, I got paid for that. I get a dining room set. This is what I said, it's out there, you got to go get it. This is, and I was, and I'm only, what, how old could I be? I was in the 6th grade, but I went out and got it. And it was out there. And same thing when I got out of the service, I held 2 jobs, but it's out there. You got to get it. It's a great country. And my dad was in the First World War. My brother was in Europe in the Second World War, and he wanted he wanted me to join the army when I went in, and I said no way. He says why? I says I want to take a shower every day, and I want 3 meals a day. In the army, you don't get that. So, yeah, my dad was in the First World War. He didn't speak of it much. That's about it. Well, I'm very proud of being a veteran. I'm very fortunate that I'm still here. I still feel for the guys that didn't come back. But you can't beat the service. I mean, those guys, they're so together. You can't imagine. I I'll take you back to the ship again. We were in. This was I left this out. I should have told you. When we were leaving Norfolk, Virginia. The last day, the last night, a couple of sailors. No, second to the last night, a couple of sailors went out, and one in Norfolk, and they went to a tavern, a bar, and they got the hell beat out of them. A couple of other people, sailors and soldiers or whatever, took them and they had a big brawl, big fight and everything. And he come back his eyes all blooded up, and he was all beaten up. So the guys on the ship saw that. That next night, we were going to leave the day after that. That next night, the guys on the ship decided, okay, we're going to go to that tavern. They went to the tavern there, and they just ripped the place apart. I guess a couple of guys and they had fights, and the SPs come and they chasing them, and the SPs are getting ready to come up on the ship on the gangplank, and the guy gets on a 20 millimeter and says, "Don't you come up here, you're gonna blow you to hell," he says. don't you come up that plank. And he was on a gun, and he meant it too. So they didn't come aboard. And when we were leaving that next day, they got a call from the Norfolk uh, Navy Yard, the head guys there, and said to the captain, "Don't you ever come back to Norfolk, Virginia, because we'll never let you in again because of what they did." But you see how they stuck together. They went out and fought for the guy. That and that's the way they are. I mean, when you're a service veteran, it's 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 an honor to be. You know. Anything else? I'd like to. They do, but they're not doing enough. They're not doing enough for our veterans. I'm fortunate because I'm not bad as we have veterans that are sleeping in the streets. That's not right. That's not right. They don't have houses. That's not right. They get all shot up, and then what happens is they have to go out. I mean, I give this guy Frank Sella. You ever see him on television? He helps the veterans. He's building houses for them. I give that guy a lot of credit, but he shouldn't have to do that. The government should have to take care of those guys. Those guys went and fought for their lives. It's not right. It's not right. I mean, they should be taken care of. It's just not right that they don't take care of veterans like they should be. It's awful. Yeah. Oh, I want to thank your mother. She helps me out a lot. She's a great woman, and no, it's me. I'm fortunate. I'm 97, and I still remember a lot, and I don't have what you see here. I do all of this. This is what the service did for me. You've taken this. This is what the service did for me. They made me who I am today. And my wife did. Don't get me wrong. My wife took care of me. But the Navy, respect, they teach you everything. It like if it wasn't for that, I would never be able to live by myself like this. Because my wife she never let me do anything. She did everything for me. But what I learned when I was in the service is being used now. Because she passed away and I'm by myself here and I'm able to take care of myself. That's what the Navy did for me.
Thank you.
So I have a lot of respect for the service. It's awful. What bothers me more than anything else is, these fellas that take the knee, when they hear the Star Spangled Banner, they take a knee, and they they don't realize Iwo Jima. This is just one thing on Iwo Jima. They the four guys that went to put that flag up on the top of that mountain. Those four guys left 9,000 men down below dead to get up to that to put that flag up, and that's what you do to treat a flag. Well, 9,000 men died to put that flag up there. It's not right. It's not right. Yeah. All right. That's about it.
Thank you.
Any more
I
questions?
think that's gonna be.
You have any?